The final presenter is Mr. Richard Lumsden, because his name is L-U-M. But incidentally, he is the program director of Vision 2030 Jamaica in the Plan Development Unit at the Planning Institute of Jamaica, so that we expect that he is going to be able to, although presenting the vision last, to be able to give us some, I was going to say global, but maybe not global, some macro vision about where Jamaica can go. Mr. Lumsden has been around the place. They have him here as a former Jamaica scholar. I don't know what former means, so I take it that he's a Jamaica scholar, and he is a graduate both in economics and in finance. Mr. Lumsden.
Okay, well, I'm the tail ender. So we've all been watching T20. So, you know, tail enders have to do, they have to score a lot of runs quickly. That's another aspect of productivity. So my presentation, as it was designed, is too long. 10 minutes, right?
10 or less.
Give or take. So I'll really try and be selective in going through. And since a lot has been said already, there's ground that I don't have to cover. And also the focus on social productivity, right? I'll try and highlight some of that in the presentation. All right, so we know Vision 2030, we won't spend too much on these slides. First, long-term national development plan, overall aim, position Jamaica to achieve developed country status. Charles spoke a little to that, now in the 6th year of implementation. So we look at where we are. Overall structure, national vision, 4 national goals, 15 outcomes, those are the results. Strategies at the national and sector level, that's how we try to achieve the results. Vision, I'm sure we can all quote it by heart. Jamaica, the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. And there is some productivity embodied in that. 4 national goals. Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential. The Jamaican society is secure, cohesive, and just. Jamaica's economy is prosperous. Jamaica has a healthy natural environment. Now, we normally measure the productivity under goal 3, right? But you'll see that that circle overlaps with the other goals, and that is to indicate the linkages between the different spheres of development, the social, the economic, the environmental, and the governance spheres. And so right away, you're beginning to see the link and the broader components of social productivity. These are the 15 national outcomes grouped by goal. Again, I won't go through in detail, but you'll see education, for example, under the empowered to achieve fullest potential. Authentic and transformational culture, interestingly, includes core values, which, again, correlates to aspects of economic growth, such as innovation. And so that's also important. Safety and security and governance also show strong correlations with economic growth. And then you have the economic outcomes of macroeconomy, business environment, infrastructure, energy security and efficiency, technology, and then the industries, the goods and services producing industries. Every one of these impacts productivity in one way or the other. And then we have the environmental goals as well. So for sustainable management and use of environmental resources, hazard risk reduction, adaptation to climate change, sustainable urban and rural development. And we'll see a little bit about that. The medium-term priorities for Vision 2030 show the priorities for the period 2012 to 2015. In the center there, development and protection of human capital, national security and justice, economic stability, competitiveness, employment, environmental resilience, and climate change response, and the corresponding priority outcomes. All right, in the Vision 2030 framework, productivity is fundamental. I'm quoting from the plan document. Prosperity is determined by the productivity with which a nation uses its resources to produce goods and services. Competitiveness is determined by the relative levels of productivity between nations. Productivity is fundamental to economic models of growth, economic growth, as has been explained by previous presenters. And the key at the national level, key components of national productivity, labor productivity, total factor productivity. What are some of the key productivity issues for Jamaica? Well, as we have seen, long-term decline, sustained decline in labor productivity and total factor productivity. Through the literature, there are various causes ascribed. Poor educational outcomes, relatively low levels of certification of the labor force, high levels of migration of tertiary graduates and skilled workers, that's a massive loss of human capital, crime and violence, macroeconomic instability. All of these various studies have shown correlation with productivity. Business environment, bureaucracy, tax system, high factor and transaction costs. Also high levels of informality in the economy, as informal enterprises are shown to be less productive, economically productive than more formal enterprises, partly as a function of size, because they tend to be smaller, micro and a larger percentage of micro and small enterprises. All right, where are the levels within a national planning framework within which we can seek to address these issues related to productivity? At the national level, we have to look at improving our general infrastructure, roads, transport, telecommunications infrastructure, energy infrastructure, national security, improving the stability of the macroeconomic environment, aspects related, such as mentioned, as interest rates, taxation, having a more enabling business environment, improving our education system and our education outcomes. At the sector and industry level, at that level, a lot of that is government's work at the national level, but there's a lot of work that other stakeholders can also, a lot of other roles they can play. At the sector industry level, you can have sector-specific infrastructure. Let's say, think of technology parks, for example, and value chain development, which improves the productivity of all of the players in that value chain. At the organizational level, and we've heard examples of improving management practices, firm-level investments to improve the capital-to-labor ratio, both in quantity and quality at the firm level, innovation at the firm level, and at the individual level through training, motivation, and other factors. These factor into the structure of the Vision 2030 plan. So, for example, under Outcome 2, we have national strategies to expand access to education and training for all, to establish a national qualification framework that is benchmarked to international standards, strengthen the mechanisms to align training with demands for the labor force. We heard earlier statistic about the misalignment between training and the demands of the labor force. And then under Outcome 8, develop an efficient labor market, again, in terms of matching supply and demand, and improving the labor environment to enhance labor productivity and worker satisfaction. Energy, efficiency, and conservation has been linked with productivity, total factor productivity in particular. Dynamic national innovation system. Under Outcome 12, develop company sophistication and productivity, develop economic links and clusters, promote eco-efficiency and the green economy. These are emerging sources of productivity that for sustainable development. And one of the things that we should remember when we talk about productivity, we're measuring GDP, right? At the national level, it's GDP per unit of labor, for example. So it's not physical efficiency we're measuring. Value comes into it. We're measuring physical output times value. So it's not just improve. You could become much better at producing things which people value less in the marketplace. So that's also important to bear in mind. And this is one of the areas looking forward, is how we can increase our eco-efficiency in the global marketplace. We have indicators and targets, a framework by which we monitor progress, and I've selected some of the indicators that are most directly relevant to productivity. So the percentage of the labor force that has professional or vocational certification has been increasing slowly. You can see over the baseline year, but still well below the target. So we had a target of 25%, which is relatively low target. 23.5% of the labor force has certification. Our business ranking, ease of doing business ranking, has steadily declined since 2007, when we were ranked 50th. We're now, this is 2012. 2 rankings have come out since then, and we have fallen even further in both. Labor market efficiency, which is a sub-index of the Global Competitiveness Index, we've remained relatively stable. We've shown some improvement in our energy intensity index that has fallen, showing that we are becoming more efficient in our use of energy, but not fast enough. This is a very interesting indicator, percentage share of global GDP based on purchasing power parity. We're small, but we're getting smaller in the global share of global GDP. We're now down to 0.032% in 2010, which was the latest data available. So again, this is a direct measure of our competitiveness at a global level. And it highlights and supplements some of the other data that you have been shown. The only actual indicator that we track productivity directly for, interestingly, in the framework, and it's something we could look at in terms of maybe now including overall labor productivity, is for the construction sector. We get this data from the Jamaica Productivity Center. And you see there has been some increase in labor productivity using those data, but we're still below the target that we have set. This is, I think this is the last slide I'll show. And it gives a summary of where we are after 4 years of performance from 2009 to 2012 using the Vision 2030 indicator framework. So we have 46 indicators across all of those 15 national outcomes. And using a traffic signal, where green is we met or exceeded the target for 2012, say 2009, 10, 11, 12, that's 4 years. Yellow, we improved over the baseline in 2007, but didn't meet the 2012 target. Red, we're equal to or worse than the baseline in 2007. And gray, we have 4 indicators where we can't measure it, only because at the time we had not set and agreed on targets for 2012. Using that framework, 11 of the 46 indicators are green. Some examples are shown there: literacy rate, murder rate, life expectancy, inflation, housing quality index, based on the data as at 2012. 13 or 28% of the indicators, we have made progress. Human Development Index, our share of renewable energy in the energy mix, housing tenure, and there are others. 18, by far the largest single category, we have, we're equal to or worse than the baseline. That's 39% of the total targets. Most of them are economic. Most of them are economic and are related to the fact that 2008 The year before we started measuring the data here in this time series was the global economic downturn. Poverty, debt, GDP, unemployment, most of the sectoral indicators that we have all shown a decline or since the baseline of 2007, which was the year right before that downturn. So you can see that as a country, if we are to turn around this picture, we have a lot of work to do. It's a very mixed picture. There are areas in which we are making progress. There are areas in which we have to make further progress, particularly the economic agenda. And there are measures. I have some other slides that show some of the measures that we're taking under the areas of focus under the plan. Broadly speaking, grouped around the growth agenda, macroeconomic stability, improving the business, the competitiveness of the business environment, strategic investments, human capital development, national security improvement on a holistic basis, and environmental resilience. Those are the main components of the way forward for the medium term. And we will continue to track the indicators. We're now updating for the 2013 data that are now available. So we'll see how much this dashboard changes. I've left the slide, so you can, the presentation, I suppose, they will be shared afterwards. So that's it. I'm out.